All right, I think everyone has been given enough time to join in. So welcome everyone to today's session where we're going to discuss the need for outcome-focused agile. Before we kick off, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Barbara. I'm the community manager and learning designer at MadeFor. And MadeFor is a customer experience learning organizations, meaning we teach in a bunch of different CX capabilities to ensure both professionals and organizations deliver better customer experiences. So today, a couple of things I would like to go through before we kick off. We're recording today's session, both for learning purposes and also to share some social snippets. So if you object to that or not okay with that for any reason, just reach out to me and we'll figure it out. We'd love to see your faces. I already see some faces in front of me, and that makes it a whole lot more personal and exciting to give these sessions. So if you are okay, please put your cameras on. And then lastly, please join via the link in the chat. I have already shared it, but for the people that have just joined, I will share it again. Today, we are doing our session also on the Miro board. I will explain in a bit what that actually is. So interaction is key. As mentioned, the approach, what is actually a free taster session? So it's a session using a Miro board and a Zoom meeting to explain a current topic in relation to our bootcamp. And today that is the Digital Product Management Bootcamp. So as mentioned, it is an interactive board. So there are some elements on there that you can interact with, some questions you can answer, to browse around also in some of the previous tasters that we have. So feel free to do that. But today we are going to focus on digital product management specifically, and there are a couple of objectives that we're going to go through. And firstly, that is to understand the need for delivering outcomes over output in product, to explore examples of outcome-focused agile, and to understand, of course, eventually if a role in product management is something for you. So we're currently in the kickoff, then we're going to go through these objectives and we will wrap up with a Q&A. And before I introduce Stephan, who's going to talk all about this today, let's quickly, there it is, reflect on why product in relation to customer experience. And at MadeFor, we believe and we see also that customer experience is a top priority in business for the next 5 years. However, only 43% of all businesses put CX as a top priority, and we would like to help make that percentage even grow, because also 86% of buyers will pay more for a better customer experience. And that does not only resemble in these percentages, but also, for example, the amount of vacancies that are being put out there at this instance. So what you can see here underneath these rows of one of the biggest organizations that are currently out there are vacancies in a variety of different CX roles. So if we take a look at, for example, UX, customer success, data science, but also product, you can see that there is a lot of demand for talent in these industries at the moment. So that is why MadeFor is also out there to help bridge that talent gap and give people the right skills and organizations the right capability to actually deliver better CX. But today we're not going to talk about everything of CX, because that would be a very long talk, but we're specifically going to focus on product. So Stephan, can you please introduce yourself and take it away?
Thank you, and good afternoon, at least if you're in the same time zone. My name is Stephan, and briefly introduce myself. You see a couple of elements that show you a snapshot of my life. Next to being a professional Scrum trainer, I collaborate with I have already collaborated with a lot of organizations, especially on adopting or inserting agility in organization. And over the last couple of years, there's a primary focus is on shifting focus from maximizing the output we deliver to maximizing the outcome we deliver. And well, something about myself as well, next to helping organizations, training organizations, I'm also a part-time farmer somewhere in the east of the Netherlands. So something with horses and sheep and chickens and stuff like that. So that's how I try to balance my life. I'm not going to talk about the farming part. Let's focus on the outcome focused agile. So this is something, especially from a product perspective, where there's a lot of things to gain. So if we go to the next part, then if we look at the perspective from developing products, or maybe even or also services, there's been over the last couple of decades a lot of focus, a lot of incentives on maximizing the output we deliver. So what I would like to explore with you is to shift that focus more to outcome, and we're going to practice that as well. And to give you a brief example, and that's something one of the very well-known Dutch management gurus uses as an example is, if you enter a hardware store, for example, and you get a lot of ads and a lot of promotions on a wide range of drills, hammer drills, wood drills, rock drills, or metal drills, all kind of drills. But those are all outputs. You don't want to output. The outcome would be you want to have a hole in the wall, or eventually you want to hang a painting. That's the outcome we're aiming for. And if we translate that to our day-to-day practice, and especially if you're working in digital product environment, you see a lot of your stakeholders, you see a lot of even product managers and product owners focusing on defining the output. So maybe a more example, a little bit closer to home, is a login screen. That's an output. You don't want to log in. No, not a single user wants to log in. That's an output. The outcome would be that that the solution would be safe, and you only see your own information and not other people's information. You only see the information that's relevant to you. That's the outcome you would like to have. And maybe the output would be a login screen, but maybe there are other ways to achieve that goal as well. So one of the organizations I worked with recently, they one of the stakeholders, and it was about objecting to a parking ticket you received. So nobody likes that. So obviously we object to that parking, because it's never our fault. It's always someone else's fault, or the machine wasn't working, or whatever. So you object to that, and they approach us to eventually what we found out, what the desired outcome was. We would like to reduce the amount of objections people submit to their parking tickets. But that's not the question they asked. They asked, we want to have a decision tree. Well, you don't want a decision tree. That's the output. Maybe there are different ways to reduce the amount of objections people have to receiving a parking ticket. So there may be easier or simpler ways, because creating a decision tree might be very, very challenging, takes a lot of time, might be very expensive. Maybe just that was some of the information they had as well. Just put on the information on what are the chances of your objection actually succeeding, categorized by several different categories. So that's one of the major shifts in focus we would like to achieve. So there are a couple of things you really need to focus on what actually helps in defining the outcome is, first of all, what is the problem you're actually trying to solve? The problem you're solving is not creating a decision tree. It's something else. And that takes some practice into convincing and having a conversation with your stakeholders on why are you asking for an app or a login screen or a drill. Also, second key tip would be, you're not your user. You might have a lot of technical expertise or expertise on the product you're creating or developing, but that's maybe not what your user wants. You don't know. You make a ton of assumptions what your user wants, and maybe even your users create make an assumption as well what they would like to have. So we really need to put effort into empathizing with our users. So there's some steps to take there as well. And third key tip would be, what does your success look like? What's the outcome we would like to achieve with this product? What will be the consequence of the thing we've delivered? So creating a decision tree, awesome, we deliver that. But does that define success, that we eventually deliver this decision tree? Well, maybe not. So what does the success look like? How are we going to assess if we're on the right track in delivering the right amount of output or outcome? This is challenging, so I'm mixing the words up sometimes as well. So what we'd like to do, and make this an interactive part as well, is we would like to have your input on, and below we see some inspiration perspectives as well. But if we take the product of a car, and that's not a digital product, but just a car, I would like to challenge you, to each of you, if you have access to this Miro board, to create one sticky note where you have this, where you describe an output of a car, and challenge yourself in redefining that particular output into an outcome. So let me give you one example, and maybe that's the easy one, maybe just the one you already thought about. The ability to steer the car. Steering a car is an output. The outcome would be, we would like to have the car change direction. So go left or go right. Maybe there are different ways, other ways to have the car change direction. Right, so what we'd like you to do, give you 1 or 2 minutes, each of you create a sticky note or pick a sticky note. There are already some empty ones available. Define an output for a car and challenge yourself in defining that output as an outcome. We give you about 2 minutes, right, Barbara?
Absolutely, yes. I was about to say, I will set a timer of 2 minutes as well on Miro and start it. Also, for those unfamiliar with Miro, and as I see already in front of me, I see everyone is doing a great job, so I don't need to explain it properly. Just in case, here on the left-hand side of my screen, you see a little icon saying sticky note. You can click on it, pick your favorite color, and just drop it in there. You can also, of course, pick one of the sticky notes that's still left there and write down your thoughts. So good luck. I already see some great submissions here, and also feel free not to limit it to just one. So if you have more ideas, just grab another sticky note and put your thoughts on the board. Let's see if we can come up with as many as possible. All right, last 10 seconds. Finish your thoughts. Submit your last thinking. See also some creative stickies out there already. I love it. All right.
So thank you. And I see we already have an experienced group of outcome thinkers. But this is, maybe it might even be an easy perspective. In the previous segment, we've already covered you're not your user. So if you don't know a lot about cars, and probably you're a car user yourself, this might be a little bit more easy. So if you're really a car expert, you know everything there is to know about a car, this might be a challenge, because you know for every outcome you probably have an idea on how that works. So a gearbox, I have no clue on how a gearbox works. And being a product manager, for example, for developing a car, you could even argue if you need to have in-depth knowledge on this gear. The biggest challenge is, let me find the corresponding sticky note. I assume it's different speed level. So I don't know who is it from, but correct me if I'm wrong. So if you're able to define an outcome like that, it creates freedom for, or the flexibility for your specialists, your developers, your engineers, your whoever the people you work with who can transform this outcome into an output. It creates some flexibility. So right below this area, we've shared some very well-known organizations and their output they deliver and the actual outcome they deliver. So look into that also for your inspiration. But this outcome thinking, especially if you really have in-depth knowledge, this takes some practice. And if you do this a couple of times, you get the hang of it. It's a lot easier and it creates a lot of flexibility. So let me give you a very brief example. I think we have time for that as well. With a team I worked with that were developing a wizard for users to go through. So this is a 4-step process they need to go through. So the question was, the desired outcome was, users would like to know where they are in a certain where they are in that wizard. So in that process, where am I? So the engineers, they thought of this very fancy looking progress bar that was animated and was reusable, looked very great. So they came up with that idea. But that took about, well, let's say that took about 3 hours to create. I'm just guessing a number. So that took about 3 hours to create. And this was one of the most, or at least the value of that was perceived the most valuable item. But there was only a capacity to spend 1 hour on this. So the product owner in this example challenged the group, given the outcome or the required outcome or expected outcome that users would like to know where they are in the process. He challenged the team, what can you do achieving that outcome in just 1 hour? And the team said, well, instead of creating this progress bar that is animated and reusable, etc., we would just replace that by words. You're in step 1 of 4. You're step 2 of 4. Different output, but still achieves the required outcome, but with a lot less output. So the challenge would be, if you're a product owner or product manager, defining this outcome. And that's something you need to maybe teach your stakeholders as well, your users as well. You don't want an app, you don't want a login screen, you don't want a progress bar, you don't want a decision tree. You would like to have something else. And the challenge would be having that conversation with your stakeholders, but also challenge your engineers as well. How can we achieve that outcome with the least amount of output? So there are a couple of things you can do if we move to the next part. So there's a couple of things, like I already mentioned, collaborate and coordinate with your stakeholders. This takes some time to get them into that mindset of the outcome. The product backlog, if you're a product owner, you're probably using a product backlog. Challenge yourself, are the items that are on there, are those outcome defined as an outcome? Or are you still asking for specific outputs? During planning events, work with your team, challenge them, just like the example I just gave. Are we focusing on delivering that outcome, or are we putting a lot of effort into creating the expected output? And still, these are assumptions we're making. I already mentioned that earlier. So we think this will solve the output we delivered, solve our problem. So we need to continuously assess, get feedback, test our output if it has the right quality. We need to measure that. So we need to assess create the right KPIs, etc. So there's a lot of things that go into this outcome thinking. And in the bootcamp we're running, I think next week. I think the next one is planned to start. this outcome focus is one of the things we start with right away in the first day, trying to practice that. And the decisions we make there, defining this problem, understanding this problem, going towards an idea. So not really a solution, but the outcome we would like to achieve to solve that problem. Working our way down to what kind of larger portions of a product are we going to cover, and how we'll refine that into smaller outcome focused stories. So if we talk about stories, the use stories, that's just a tool that helps you define a specific outcome. And if you're already familiar with the concept of user stories as a I want so that that's basically the template of a user story. You can still abuse that to create an output, of course. So as a product owner, I want to solve a certain bug so that my numbers look a lot better. That's not what we're looking for. Probably there's some outcome you would like to achieve. So if you find yourself defining it as a product owner or as a product, I want something, you're probably not taking the perspective of the outcome you would like to achieve. And of course, at the end, we need to define and validate if we're doing the right things, to validate if we actually are delivering the expected outcome. So in the bootcamp, we cover all these topics, and there's throughout that we cover we practice that, and we have you fail and learn and succeed, of course, in a safe environment. And we cover all the aspects on this. So this basically covers what we do, and I hope I give you some inspiration, some make you think a little bit on this outcome focus we should spend more time on, because this takes some time to get people to that point. And now is the time for me to stop talking and taking your questions.
Thank you so much, though, Stephan, for showing these great examples, and also for everyone here today to participate in thinking about the outcomes and outputs over maybe a simple example, but how to actually put that into practice. Indeed, are there any questions, any things you'd like to discuss, still clarify? You can either unmute or put your question in the chat. I will have a look there as well. I see that Baiba, do I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, Baiba, that's true.
Yes. Can you, I see that you've put in something here. Can you maybe elaborate a bit on that? I think it's a really interesting example.
Yes, basically, I don't know if you read this book. Of course, it's a concept of mom test, like the way you ask the questions and the way you approach the customers. And this is always in my head, like if people would ask instead of faster horse, instead of cars, then we would still on the horses. So yes, this is just an example I truly love to when talking about this. Exactly. And thank you for the presentation. Very, very nice and very interactive. First time I was using the sticky notes. Thank you.
Cool. Nice. So hopefully you're encouraged to use a lot more. And still, it's still a back and forth game. So sometimes people don't know what they want. So you need to go into that conversation. So sometimes they ask for an output, and you need to guide them or challenge even yourself to what we'd like to achieve from that. But sometimes people just come with their problems, share their problem, and it's your challenge to figure out what the right output is, with the least amount of output, of course, because that makes things a lot cheaper. Great example. I'm gonna look into that as well.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments, things you would like to ask Stephan maybe still? Otherwise, feel free to also reach out after this chat if you can come up with anything still. Always happy to answer any of your questions. And if that is all, I would like to thank Stephan very much for giving us insights in this and explaining a bit more about outcome versus output, and all of you for attending today. I hope you had a great time during this 30 minutes. And if you want to learn more about digital product management, then you can have a look at the links or any of the other CX capabilities, of course, that we talk about. As the final thing, I would just like to launch a poll quickly about your experience during today's session. it would be really helpful and useful for us if you can fill that out. And if you have done so, the last thing remains is again thanking you all and wishing you a lovely day. So thank you so much.